1950s, influenced both by developments in contemporary architecture and the technological advances of the space race, a small group of Japanese designers began to produce work under the banner The Metabolists. In a post-World War II Japan, where many of the cities and traditional structures have been reduced to rubble by bombs, these architects, artists, and urban planners were primarily concerned with rebuilding cities and creating housing structures. Unlike other modern architecture that minimized materials and detailing, the Metabolists designed cities that imagined a future of limitless resources. Their philosophy proposed that architecture should mimic the natural ability of organisms to change or mutate over time, according to necessity. Heavily influenced by modern technology, the structures often consist of individual modules plugged into larger adaptable superstructures. The transformation from a centralized city into a linear city in KenzoTange's project, where communities and smaller towns would settle along a main axis, appears to be a very obvious and useful solution for Tokyo. Unlike in the virtual world, in our physical world, distance matters, and many common services such as food supplies have no replacement in virtuality. Therefore, to think about the Tokyo of tomorrow as a linear system with many smaller centers and people living along the axis working for decentralized firms without losing the opportunity for physical interaction, it's a very reasonable conclusion to the problem. Tokyo is lucky to be located next to a bay that allows for a linear expansion. Tang argued that the transportation system was the physical foundation of a city's operation, and mobility was the factor that would bring a city vitality. The communication system was particularly important for the organization of a pivotal city like Tokyo. Tang articulated its significance with a metaphor. It is the arterial system which preserves the life and human drive of the city, the nervous system which moves its brain. Mobility determines the structure of the city. Tang declared that his plan for Tokyo had three objectives. Number 1, to shift from a radiocentripetal system to a system of linear development. Number 2, to find a means of bringing the city structure, the transportation system, and urban architecture into organic unity. And number 3, to find a new urban spatial order which would reflect the open organization and the spontaneous mobility of contemporary society. Let me introduce KenzoTange's Tokyo expansion and divide the design into four major parts. Number 1, the connection between Tokyo and the proposed linear expansion. The first step in creating the civic axis is the construction of a cycle transportation system in a height of 40 meters above existing Tokyo that only touches the ground at points of interchanges. The system connects to all major highways and railroads. The plan shows the beautiful integration of the new transportation system into the existing one. Number 2, the traffic circulation along the civic axis. The traffic circulation system is detached from the ground and suggests a strong separation between the traffic and its pedestrians. It is designed to carry up to 5 million people daily. The grid on which the street system is based on consists of squares with side length of 1 kilometer. The system allows for a step-by-step expansion from Tokyo to the other side of Tokyo Bay. Public buildings are located between the two parallel highways, while residential areas are attached from the outside. Two main shapes of business buildings. The business buildings are also detached from the ground and sit on so-called cores that are organized on a grid consisting of squares with the side length of 200 meters. The height of the cores ranges among 150 and 200 meters and leaves approximately 40 meters of open space below the buildings. While one of the building types, A, relies strictly on the grid, the other, B, has the shape of a spine pointing to public open spaces. Number 4, the perpendicular organic growth of the residential area. The residential buildings, C, are attached to the civic axis through a perpendicular street system. Like leaves of a tree, the residential area seems to grow away from the civic axis. The buildings reside on huge platforms on the water and propose the old relationship between the population of Tokyo and the sea. The buildings appear random in size and position, but alike in shape. The issue of mobility had been a theme of theoretical exploration among European modernists since the early 20th century. Le Corbusier's Villa Radius was a profoundly important step in introducing a new awareness of mobility into architecture and city design. He not only recognized that the automobile would fundamentally transform the infrastructure of a contemporary city, but also implied that it would transcend the traditional role as a means of transportation and become a communication symbol to unify the modern society. In his ideal plan of the Radiant City, Le Corbusier used pilotis as a basic structuring element of urban design to separate pedestrians from the automobiles. The ground would virtually be left open as an enormous green space for pedestrians, while automobile transportation was given unencumbered access into a separate system. The role of pilotis in urban design was partially realized in Le Corbusier's Unité de Habitation in Marseille, intended as a prototype of collective housing for large-scale urban reconstruction. There was no doubt that Le Corbusier's theory has influenced Tang. Tang introduced the Pilates system into his plan for Tokyo a few years later and integrated it with the so-called core system. That is, vertical shafts containing stairways, elevators, and other surfaces.